Hi, everybody, and good evening here from our Little Bear Meditation Center north of the Arctic Circle. We're creating a little center here. Maybe sometime you'll have a chance to come up for some intensive meditation work. But right now at 70 degrees north latitude, um, well, we're up here near the head center of the planetary logos, obviously, right? Anyway, we're continuing our Dissipation of Glamour series. It's part of the ASK series of programs. It's an invocatory series of programs. Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be open to you. It's the new science of invocation which will be so prominent during the Aquarian age, and in a simple and humble way we try to bring in all of these interrelated factors. They're all interrelated. Triangles on Wednesdays, Reappearance of the Christ Thursdays, the Glamour webinar, it's not a broadcast, on Fridays, Invoking the Souls of Nation, another broadcast that Saturday, and then Attracting Money for Hierarchical Purposes, that is Sunday. In addition, of course, to the other Full Moon and Blue Rose Sisterhood and other sort of programs, we might as well have a full-time radio station here. I think it's heading in that direction. So I'm very glad to welcome you here. You know, we have about 40 of us present. Olivia, Tuija, and I started this particular effort with Glamour, although, I know there are many groups out there that are doing something similar, and we're backed up by our team, technical team, which is Brett Mitchell, B.L. Allison, and oftentimes Joe Waltz. She's not here today, but they help keep these things going. Now let's have just a little alignment, and then I'll review one or two sentences that we covered last time, and then into the idea about a process which disciples are following if they want to eliminate glamour in their life. I mean, when we work on individual glamour, in a way, we're working on group glamour. Our meditation is on group and national glamour, but we have discussed that particular section, and now we are working on the individual glamour. But if we succeed in recognizing what our glamours are, which is really a very hard thing to do, actually, other people see them more readily than we do, then we are automatically contributing to a lessening of the glamorous condition of the astral plane, and we are contributing, therefore, to the welfare of the world in terms of the dissipation of glamour in general. Okay, so let's have a little alignment here and see what we can do. Okay. We'll all link up with each other. We're in many different countries and, different continents, largely North and South America, Europe and Australia, New Zealand, but also sometimes in India and the Far East and so forth. It doesn't make any difference really where we are, because the time and space factors are overcome in the world of the soul. So we think of ourselves then as one consciousness which is working together in the dissipation of the fogs and miasmas which hide reality, veil reality upon the astral plane, and in general within the Kama Manasic world. And I like the image, that the winds of freedom come along. It's from the Buddhic plane in a way. The winds come along and disperse the clouds of glamour. The Buddhic plane, the intuitional plane, is really the plane of air, and a certain freeing up occurs when those winds blow, and then the sun comes out and evaporates the clouds, the moisture, and whatever that sun represents, it shines freely in our life. It may represent the soul, it may represent the spirit, it may represent the planetary logos, it may represent even the great solar god that permeates his solar system as the life of his solar system. We need the sun not to be veiled by the dark and distorting clouds of glamour. And we need to clear up this condition. As for glamours, their name is legion, many, 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 the Tibetan tells us, and according to our rays, so are the glamours we are likely to have, and of course, not suspect that we have them. But together we will do our best to focus the light of matter, the light of mind, and the light of the soul all together, visually, imaginatively, and we will do our best to work on the astral plane at the dissipation, particularly at this time when so many important decisions are being made, the dissipation of the glamours of hatred and separatism, separateness. The one great heresy, says the Tibetan, the heresy of separateness. And we will try to make sure that in our life, the trend of our thought and the substance of our actions does not contribute to an unwarranted repulsion or philosophical separateness which really doesn't exist. It's an illusion acting out as a glamour. And so we are ready to think together, to work together ongoingly, because this isn't going to disappear right away. It's a world problem and an ongoing world problem, and it's the great Lord Maitreya himself, when he reemerges or reappears, who will direct the real assault on the glamorous situation of the world. And, the Aquarian age lasts 2,500 years or 2,160. It depends on how you count it. It doesn't begin until 2117. So by the time we reach the Venus decanate, when Venus is the most powerful of the planets in Aquarius, and there is the era of brotherhood, and that sacred planet, Venus, is very powerful in the psyche of humanity and the planet, then maybe we really will be rid of these distortions for the most part, or for a great part, because Venus is partially a fifth-rate planet. It does connect with the Ajna center with that beam we use to dissipate the glamours. So hang in there. It'll only be a few lives of hard work, and we'll all get there. So we'll sound the Om and close our little reflection. We'll be meditating a little later, actually using the Tibetan's formula. Okay, friends, we had reached the point where we were talking about the ending of the dualistic consciousness. That was last week. I sometimes lose track a little bit where I am. I intend to cover a certain number of paragraphs or sentences, and I don't get there. But anyway, with a little help from my friends, I think I'm in the right place. So we have this dualism that culminates, the end of it, at the time of the third initiation. Why should that be? Well, interestingly enough, the unitive monad enters into the picture at the third initiation, and the one thing about the monad is it is the one. And so the illusion of subject and object begins to be overcome at that point. Now he talks about the fight between the pairs of opposites, soul and personality, the victory of the solar angel. Well, that's the part of ourselves that's on the higher mental plane. And there is a great being associated with our own egoic manifestation on the higher mental plane. So the victory of the angel occurs there. I would say it really occurs finally at the fourth initiation, but let's just say there's a great majority, sort of 3/2 at that point. The 3 representing the 2, representing the soul, and the 2 representing the personality. And what's really interesting is this 3/2. If you look at the proportion in music, it represents the 5th. Yada-da-da-dum, dum-dee-dum. And that is the interval of the soul. So the soul becomes dominant at that point. Although the final victory, I would say, really is at the fourth initiation of crucifixion or renunciation. And, well, this angel, interestingly enough, embodies the forces of good in the individual. Well, that makes a lot of sense because if you think about it, there is a star called Sirius, and it is the teacher, as a huge, great solar logos, it's the teacher of our non-sacred solar logos, the sun. He's not quite sacred yet. As far as we're concerned, he's very sacred, but in terms of cosmic evolution, not yet sacred. So anyway, it is said that no evil can appear in the sunshine of the greater sun. That's Sirius. So obviously, a great force of goodness is coming from Sirius, and the solar angels are trained on Sirius. And those of us human beings who will be trained as solar angels later on, maybe 85% of us, will go to Sirius and will really come out as representatives of the forces of good, the kind of good that exists on that sacred star who has cosmic mental polarization. I know those sound like, big words, big ideas, but so far our sun is very emotional. I mean, what does that mean? But it's a Davic situation, Buddhic Davic emotional situation, has achieved a kind of second cosmic initiation, but not the third, which Sirius has. So these forces of good are really important. If they arise when you've achieved the third initiation as a human being, or the third initiation as a cosmic being, and that will mean that whatever represents the monad for Sirius is in touch with it, and maybe that's some cosmic logos, with 7 suns as its major centers. So anyway, here's our angel within us, a certain part of it, having pervaded the entire universe of the human being with just a fragment of itself. It remains above the whole fray, but a certain amount of it is right within us and giving us the force of good. So we always want to call upon it. Then the dualism and the desire that for that which is material and not oneself. Well, everything is oneself, but at a certain stage of evolution, we have to distinguish between the self and the not self. So we have to identify, with the whole eventually, of course. But there is an aspect of the not self, and we really learn how to enter into the self. And this dualism dies out when we can do that. And then these great Aquarian virtues, unity and the life more abundantly, is achieved. That's a monadic factor, and we all know that Aquarius is related to universality and to the life more abundant, and that's what the Lord Maitreya, the Christ, is coming to bring, the life more abundant as the head of the hierarchy as far as humanity can absorb it. So that's kind of where we ended up last time. Now, and what I'm asking you to do basically is, think about the things you want to discuss. They will be either things that we're reading about here or things that you have thought about before but didn't have a chance to really, get into. So, there's no holds barred when it comes to what we may want to discuss in the interim before our meditation. So anyway, the process, he says, followed by the disciple who is consciously working at the dissipation of glamour. Notice that it is a conscious, definite mental activity. Dissipation of glamour in his life can be divided into 4 stages to which the following definitions can be given. So, the technicalities. DK gives us this, and we have to stock our minds with the technicalities. Later, it will all flow together as one easy kind of thing, and a unity of stages, not necessarily in a rigorous sequential manner. The stage of the recognition of the glamour or glamours which hide the real. Well, that's the whole thing. As long as we're under the spell of glamour, we don't see. It is a great veiling factor. And Mars and Neptune, both of them, in a sense, 6-ray planets, can whip up the astral plane, so we can't really see the real. And we don't, we don't have the true realizations and the true spiritual recognitions when we are blanketed by this heavy glamour. These glamours are dependent in any particular life crisis, maybe that's when they emerge the most, upon the ray of the personality. Other rays are involved too. It's possible for people who are second-ray souls to have second-ray glamours. First-ray souls can have first-ray glamours because the personality grabs hold of the ray quality and attributes it or works with it in a personal way. But maybe when you're having a life crisis and you are in the throes of that and certain tendencies emerge, perhaps we can get a better sight upon what our glamours are. So anyway, most of us don't recognize all the glamours we have. Maybe we don't even recognize one single glamour that we have. Maybe not. And when people tell us our behavior is a little off in certain respects, we doubt that they are telling the truth. Just the way this story of Master DK, when his teacher told him, well, you think you're devoted to me, but you're really devoted to yourself. Whew. He protested mightily. So he tells us, until it was proven in that life, and he, as he say, he fell to earth of his own weight. So sometimes we have to learn the hard way, but then we really learn. Okay, 4 stages. So the stage of recognition. Hey, are we clear? When we go down the glamour list, we did this before. We looked at the glamours of the 7 rays, and they can come from your personality, yes, but from your soul and even from your mind or from your astral body. They can appear on any of the rays that you may have. So are we clear about ourselves when it comes to what glamours we might have? Now remember, the major glamour of the second ray is self-pity, and well, there's probably maybe the major glamour of the third ray is manipulation, and the glamour of the fourth ray is a kind of conflict which makes no sense, like being in a bar and somebody says, let's have a fight, and everybody starts to fight even though they have no cause. And so forth. There are certain key glamours. So when you read that section in Glamour a World Problem around page 120, 124, in there somewhere, just try to find that particular glamour or a couple of them that fit with your own ray tendencies. Okay, then the next stage, the stage of focusing the disciple's consciousness upon the mental plane. The fifth ray is needed here, the advent center is needed, and the gathering of the light, imaginatively, and then really, imagination makes things happen. The gathering of the light to the point of focus on the mental plane so that the illumination is clear. You understand really what you're doing, why you have to do it. The work to be done is plainly seen. And the searchlight of the mind, which is consisting of the light of matter, the light of mind, and the light of the soul, all three together, is directed upon the glamour, which it is intended should be dissipated, and that, of course, is an act of the creative imagination. We have to understand what this glamour is, what it's doing, the damage it can do, the damage it has done to us, the damage it's done to humanity, how it has veiled reality. If you want to study this on a mass scale, just go back to the Second World War, where he says that the three Axis powers specified or exemplified illusion, glamour, and Maya. Japan was Maya, Germany was glamour, and Italy was illusion. Now, what does he mean by that? Because this is occurring on a mass scale, and he said by far Germany was in the worst shape with the glamour. After all, it does have a Pisces personality, and he talks about the negative impressionability of the German people under Pisces, so you can see they could easily be subjected to the malevolence coming from the astral plane. Okay, so now here's the third of the four stages. Four stages of the disciple consciously working at the dissipation of glamour in his life. The stage of direction, involving the steady pouring in of the light under intelligent direction, that's up to you, and we have to know what we're doing using the fifth ray, into the dark places of the astral plane, which we imagine or have had some experience with. Remembering that the light will enable the disciple to do two things. This is interesting. Dissipate the glamour. He says it's a very satisfying experience because there's a certain amount of freedom. And then this is one of those peculiar statements, see the real. A terrifying experience, brother of mine. So, our personal elements recoil from the light. We sometimes call it the repression of the sublime. There's a kind of a lunar response to intense light. You just recoil, hide, and run away from it. Run away from it. I think I really have to get rid of any Skype calls that are coming in for me right now. Okay. All right. Now, I have a little quote from the Rays and Initiations talking about what's terrible. What's terrible? What is terrific? What is terrifying? And it's not just scary things of a negative nature. So from the Rays and Initiations, he says, again, this time in relation to the soul comes the repetition of the discovery of the door of initiation, its use and its appearance. Finally, behind the initiate. Now you're a third degree initiate at this point. You're stepping through that door, which is leading you really into the higher worlds. This time the door must be found upon the mental plane, I suppose, in a way between the lower mind and the higher mind, and not as earlier upon the etheric level, probably at the first initiation. This is brought about by the aid of the soul. Remember, it's our own higher self plus the solar angel, and of the lower mind, and through the revealing power of the clear, cold light of reason coming from the Buddhic plane. The Antakarana is partially built. So that clear, cold light which reveals reality the way it is coming from the Buddhic plane. So, this is helping to find the door and go through it. Then he says this amazing thing. Every time I've read it, I've just stopped in my tracks. When discovered, the door, the revelation of a terrible, though beautiful experiment faces the initiate. Well, he's gone through it, right? We have not. The revelation of a terrible, though beautiful, experiment faces the initiate. He finds that this time alignment is not his need, but the definite undertaking of a creative work, the building of a bridge between the door which lies behind and the door which lies ahead. And that's going to go all the way up to the monad through the triad. This involves the construction of what is technically called the Antakarana, the rainbow bridge. This is built by the disciple in training. That's what we are, right? Upon the basis of his past experience. It is anchored in the past and firmly grounded in the highest, rightly oriented aspect of the personality, which is the illumined mind. As the disciple then creatively works, weaving this Antakarana, projecting the light over the Antakarana, visualizing it, he finds that there is a reciprocal action on the part of the presence, the monad, the unity which stands behind the door. Something's coming from the other side of the door, and in the story of the prodigal son, as the prodigal son returns from the lower country in the far distant land, the father, the presence, the monad, runs forth to meet him. He discovers that one span of the bridge, if I might so call it, is being built or pushed forward from the other side of the gulf, a gulf in consciousness, separating him from experience in the life of the spiritual triad, where all the masters live and work and have their consciousness. The spiritual triad is essentially, to the initiate, what the threefold personality is to the man in physical incarnation. So my point was terror, reality, to the unschooled, unprepared consciousness, which is, in a way, all of us, can look terrifying, even though it is beautiful, spiritual, uplifting, and restores us to our home. It takes a lot of courage, not just to face the dark, but to face all that is high and beautiful. So anyway, this is the stage of direction, and you're holding the light steady, under intelligent direction, into the dark places, and you can just imagine what they are. All you have to do is think of the low desires which drive humanity at this particular time, and we can help dissipate the glamour and eventually see the real. Now we come to the fourth stage. The fourth stage in this process of the disciple who is consciously working at the dissipation of glamour. This is the stage of identification with the real. Now, this is the initiate stage, right? As it is contacted after the dissipation of the glamour. Identification with the real. That's the whole purpose of our meditation. And what I like to add to it is not only with the real, but as the real. You are the real. In the added light, which is now available, there will be a further recognition of still subtler glamours, which in their turn must be dissipated. Well, you gotta think of it. There must be even, this is the cosmic physical plane we're living on. So even though the higher aspects of that cosmic physical plane represent very high spiritual states for all of us, it can also be the place where subtler glamours are found. Now, are there any cosmic glamours on the cosmic astral plane? Well, we have to recognize that the Black Lodge, in its cosmic aspect, hangs out on the cosmic astral plane, so they are the beings that really stir up all the glamour on the cosmic physical plane. But anyway, we don't have to worry about that. That's more the province of Shambhala and the greater centers. We have enough to deal with in our own, astral plane and our own system. The process then of recognition, focusing, dissipation. See, we recognize the glamour. What is it? We focus the light. We dissipate, disperse the clouds. And finally, we have the consequent revelation of the real goes on continually. From the time a disciple treads the path of accepted discipleship until the third initiation. Well, excuse me. When is this accepted discipleship? Well, DK was dealing with maybe 20-something accepted disciples, maybe more. He accepted them into the periphery of his ashram, and they had not yet achieved the second initiation. It's possible somewhere midway between the first and second initiation, which can last a long time, or maybe not, accepted discipleship can be achieved. And it's not just a question of your achievement, it's a question of your relationship to a particular master. He emphasizes that. So that goes on before the second initiation and after, until the third initiation. So all of this work with glamour continues even after the second initiation, at which time the majority of glamours of the worst kind, the crudest kind, will be understood and maybe dissipated in our lives. The clue to all success in this process is, therefore, connected with meditation and the holding of the mind steady in the light of the soul, the holding of the mind steady in the light of the soul, and not the victim of errant concrete thought forms or the victim of so many impulsive desires. No, it is the instrument of the soul on the higher mental plane. Only through steadiness, that's what characterizes a disciple, not an aspirant. Aspirant is now and then. The disciple is steady. Only through steadiness can the beam of light be formed, intensified, focused, and projected. And that's all done with the creative imagination. And then, at the right moment, withdrawn. You can't leave it out there forever, withdrawing. We can't work on that forever. It is a cyclic work. I cannot here enter upon an elucidation of the process of meditation based on the right understanding of the nature of concentration. It is a Leo factor. Concentration, Leo, meditation, Virgo, contemplation, Libra, and so forth. I have written much upon the subject, and the Raja Yoga discipline is well known. And all of us as disciples are supposed to have that book in our possession, Raja Yoga, along with the Bhagavad Gita and the New Testament and the crest jewel of discrimination, Viveka Kudamani. These are things we all need in our possession, he said. So he's written on this, wonderful book, The Light of the Soul, that he supervised as Alice Bailey made commentary on his translation of the Yoga Sutras. Mental concentration and control is now the ordinary theme of all instruction given by educators and enlightened parents. It is difficult for the average person today to realize that there was a time when such phrases as use your mind, or if you will only think, or a little mental control on your part would be useful, were totally unknown because the mind was so little developed. So in this age of glamour, which really began in Atlantis, there weren't so many ways of combating it. People were pretty much the victim of it. It's only when initiation comes and a degree of mental control that we can actually attack this problem in an intelligent way. It was then only recognized as a functioning factor by those with initiate consciousness in those days. The path of evolution is in fact the path of recognitions leading to revelation. That's a really important sentence, and I hope we can take it in. The path of evolution is, in fact, the path of recognitions. Something flashes into consciousness which wasn't there before, and instead of just these infrequent flashes, we get the steady shining of the sun, which really is revelation. The whole process of evolution is initiatory in character. We're always entering into some new vibratory arena which reveals more of the nature of reality. The whole process of evolution is initiatory in character, leading from one expansion of consciousness to another until the worlds of the formless and of form stand revealed in the light which the initiate generates and in which he walks. So we generate this revelatory light. It sheds light upon our own path, and it sheds light upon the path of others, and for them the way is no longer quite so dark. Well, okay, it's a question of how much we can actually do at any one time. I think maybe that's enough here. And we're going to talk about these different lights, the light in which the initiate walks, the effective glamour dispersing person walks. That's what we want to become. We want to clear ourselves so we are no longer veilers of reality, but we are revealers of reality. So this is the end of, excuse my little doggy here, doggy number 16, Dissipation of Glamour Initiative number 16, and this is, we're working in Libra now because we have passed the equinox, and it's a very good sign ruled by Venus in which to have that condition of correct balance upon the astral plane, which we all need if we're going to keep our equilibrium, be harmless, hard to do, be harmless, and dissipate the harmful glamours. Okay, so now, having talked about this just a little bit, and other things may be on your mind, there are, 43 attendees, and those of us who are on staff. So if you have questions, written questions, if you have spoken questions or statements or comments, we always reserve this time before our meditation on the dissipation of world glamour to talk a little bit about what has been discussed. Now, what I'm going to do is make this, I won't be able to get it all on, but I'll try to make this smaller so that we can see something all at once. So I'll go way down to a very low font and hope for the best. Hope that you are all have your magnifying glasses out and can see this stuff. And I'll pull these things together. Just take a second here. And, there'll be more under our eye at the same time. All right. So now, friends, if you have your thoughts, questions, comments, whatever, this is the time to put them forward, and we'll try to deal with them, in some fairly intelligent manner. But, I don't have all the answers, but who does? Maybe Master DK does. Okay, wait a second. Here's, okay. Okay, anyway, thanks, Joe, for your presence anyway. Thank you. Okay, that's one of our organizers that's helping with everything, getting all these webinars out to people. Okay, your thoughts, friends. Anything that you would like to ask or suggest, or let's see what we got here. Carl, okay. Carl, go ahead.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Carl.
I just want to say that in regards to the subtle glamours, my impression is that they're actually more difficult to deal with than the grosser.
I believe it's so harder to recognize, too. Harder to recognize, Yeah, I think so. Look, I always think about this episode in the Bible where the initiate of the third degree, called the rich young man, couldn't quite get himself to sell what he had, give it to the poor, and follow Christ. He couldn't do it. Why? Why was this? Well, did he have the glamour of the sufficient adequacy of the causal body, which was very rich in his case? He was obviously helping a lot of people, but he couldn't take that next step. So I think you're correct. It's first we'll deal with the obvious ones. You've all seen this. Let me just go here just for the heck of it. But if in case for any reason you're not sure, right around page 120 are the lists of the glamours. Now, these are only very few compared to the many. And DK was wonderful in the sense that he identified for each one of his students the particular glamour under which they were struggling, and it was quite unique to their own combination of energies and their history. And, look at all these. Just go over this. Go to your Alice Bailey CD-ROM. If you don't have one, please try to get one. It's just such a great tool. Or go to Glamour, a World Problem around page 120 and just take a look. 123, the sixth ray, the 7th ray. We went through this before, and I think the programs are found on Makara. If you didn't pick them up, if you weren't there with us at the time, you can go to the Makara site, and maybe Brett, just for the heck of it, please put in the chat box where they can go to see the the general glamour programs that we've been having. Anyway, I believe that's correct, Carl. Anything else you'd like to say about the subtle and more difficult glamours?
Not right now, Michael. Thank you.
Right. Well, that's it. And the amazing thing about glamour, even the crude ones, we don't see them. It's our habitual nature developed over lives and lives. It's how we have woven our response pattern in a way that veils the light. And it's just so natural to us that we say, hey, well, that's how I am. Somebody makes a suggestion to you and says, well, don't you think you should improve this part of your character or expression? Well, that's how I am. And just watch out for that one, because that's so often what is veiling a glamour or even an illusion which needs attention. Now, you may say, well, according to my rays and so forth, my astrology, these are my tendencies and so forth. But if you use it as an excuse, well, I can't really do anything about it. That's how I am. All you're doing is giving in to what has been built up over many lives and is veiling the reality you might otherwise see if you could crack that glamour and dissipate it. Thanks, Carl. Other thoughts or questions? Yes. Go ahead.
Joanne asks, why is the real considered to be terrifying?
Wow, that's, let me just see if I can. Questions, why is the real considered? Well, maybe each one of us is going to have to answer that as we go through these various doors. My own opinion, Joanne, is that we are made of lunar substance in our personalities, which have an automatic recoil in them. The integrity of our lunar nature is threatened by the higher energies. And of course, that's exactly what happens. At the fourth initiation, all that we considered ourselves to be as a personality is destroyed, and the lunar vehicles are dissipated with their automatic, recoil away from these high energies. And we are, even the solar angels, that group being on the higher mental plane, is dissipated. Everything we think we are, everything we're accustomed to think about ourselves as our identity just goes. And then, and when something's ready to eliminate what you think you are, then who are you? It can be a, loss of self, one of the most terrifying things in the world. So Jesus is said to have said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Now, is that a complaint, or is it an amazing realization? Because he was, very high up there. But it means the solar angel, my God, has fled. Well, not fled, but has completed its task and is going back to the heart of the sun, of the central spiritual sun. So I would just say it's a contrast of energies. The usual lunar energies which consolidate around the idea of form and which have a certain ring pass knot and a certain relatively low vibration are faced with this terrific, destructive energy of the soul, of the spiritual triad, of the monad, and their integrity is threatened. Not only is it threatened, their integrity is destroyed at the fourth initiation. That's why I think the terror comes in. But as I said before, let each one of us forge ahead and see where the moments of terror may come. And the amazing thing to me always is it's not just scary things like really dark, horrible images or whatever, lower hell type of things that can be terrifying. It's the grandeur of reality, the grandeur of the higher life, of the higher energy that can set you back in awe and terror. That's my understanding of it, and let everybody, find their own way. I hope that, is useful to a degree. Okay, what else? Thanks, Joanne. Okay, any other statements that you would like? I'm looking here, It's a great subject, and all these subjects are interrelated. Um, there's one. Okay. Oh, and there's another. Okay, so Rose, you were first. So you go ahead, then Sheldon, you go ahead afterwards. Go ahead, Rose. You're on self-mute, so you got to get rid of your self-mute. There you go. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're good. Go ahead.
So if the solar angel leaves during this process and goes about its own business, the solar angel must also be an individualized entity, which therefore would also have a monad. So
yes, exactly.
Exactly. So when the solar angel is under the duty of us, does not its monad influence us in addition to our own monad?
It's a sacrificial kind of intervention. The solar angel has its own, as DK says, don't always pester your solar angel. It has its own things to do on the higher planes, so don't always be importuning it. But with a certain well-measured intensity of investiture, it comes into the causal body of the human being. Just a fragment of itself, not the whole thing. It'd blow it all apart. It's just too big a being. And it has its own things to do on still higher planes, maybe on the cosmic ethers, who knows how high it goes. But it has a sacrificial service to perform within the egoic lotus causal body of the human being. And yes, it absolutely has its own monad. Of course, you get back to the idea that all monads are really one monad. We have all these emanations. They've come forth into tremendous multiplicity. But the great secret of the whole thing is that every one of them is the same being. It's like Argus in the mythology, this being that has 10,000 eyes. Well, maybe we should say 10 trillion eyes or 10 quadrillion eyes. It's all one being with many, many apertures of consciousness. And yet, each one of these emanations is, in a sense, a unique monad, which is still one with the one universal monad. That's how I see it. Anything further there, Rose?
Would not the ray of this solar monad be different or the same as our monadic ray?
Not necessarily.
Or have an influence?
I do think that every solar angel that once was a human being has its own monadic ray. And, there may be more than one monadic ray, as I've tried to theorize, one that belongs to the monadic plane itself and one that belongs to the logoic plane. But will it necessarily be the same? That remains to be seen. Not necessarily, or maybe it is. In other words, maybe because they don't have souls anymore in the sense of causal bodies, because they're already initiates of all degrees. So the monadic ray is the main thing. So maybe it will be revealed that the monadic ray of the solar angel is in fact correlated in some way, 246 or 1357, or maybe the same as the soul ray of the human being who is being helped. Maybe. But this has not yet, been confirmed. We can just hold it as a hypothesis, maybe yes, maybe no. It's an interesting subject, what is the solar angel? Where did it come from? What kind of training does it have? How many falls has it gone through? Apparently it's gone through 2 falls, one from the cosmic astral plane and one from the cosmic etheric plane, landing itself on the higher mental plane. Those are 2 sacrificial falls because it's already been to Sirius on the cosmic astral plane for training. And this is the future of 80 or 85%, the bulk of humanity. So many of us will find out this way if we're not too heavily laden with manas. If there's a lot of manas in the situation, maybe one does not go to Sirius. But the whole idea that the solar angel is an independent being, for all practical purposes, is true. It's not that it is part of the human being. It's only temporarily investing itself in an aspect of the human being in order to increase the frequency or the speed of evolution of that human being. But it is its own being, just the way all great beings are, and yet they're all part of the one universal monad. Okay. Okay, thanks for the question, Rose. It takes us up there. Okay, Sheldon, please go ahead.
Yes, Michael. I got a comment and then a question just on the earlier thought about the terrible though beautiful experiment. And as you were talking about it, I began to think about those stages in our lives, people that we know as well as our own, where at one stage, we have to let go of, what our parents have wanted for us and what they're programming for us. And we say, let me be myself. Just getting to that state. I'm doing my thing. I am myself. I'm contributing something. That's one kind of stage. But then what comes up here, it's like at some level the personality that obviously is being influenced heavily by the soul at this point in time. To the personality, something terrible is seen, which means I have to let go of even more control, let go of this and allow something which to the soul may appear to be beautiful. I can't see exactly what it is, don't know what it's going to look like. There's light in it, and there seems to be promise, but it is scary. That's what I was just thinking about, the stages that we go through here that make this both to the personality one thing, to the soul something else, but as we let go of the reins, so to speak, and allow ourselves to be more influenced by the higher nature, subtle glamours come up then too. Okay, good.
Yeah,
so that was my
I think that's the case. I'm giving, Tuija has come in from outside, so I'm giving her a link here to join us, working around the clock. Anyway, it's all about our ring pass knot and our comfort zone and the terror of losing your identity or losing your being. There are a hierarchy of terrors, I think, and I think that the annihilation of the threatened annihilation of what one considers to be the self, I think that is maybe one of the most terrible. And of course, we learn that there's many other layers of self, whatever we want, until we become the one infinite being itself, or recognize that we always have been that. But on the way, these relinquishings of our present ring pass knot and its comfort zone, I think that can be pretty terrible. And I think it's a good analogy, like you say, when you think about parents, the young person goes out in the world. Who am I? What can I do? I leave I have to leave the shelter of my parents, and yet I'm afraid. So what do I do? I don't know where this came from, but I remember something like you have the choice between fear and guilt. It's a great choice, isn't it? If you go forward, you experience fear. But if you remain in a non-growing state and go backwards, you experience guilt. And I would say that guilt is far more terrible in the usual sense, far more regressive than the fear that you're up against, because guilt can rot you from the inside, this feeling of not living your life. But at least if you try to live your life and face the fear, okay, then you do it and eventually succeed. Okay, good. Thank you, Sheldon. Thank you. I guess we all have some experience with this stuff, Okay, Carl.
Michael,
go ahead. Go ahead, Sheldon. Go ahead.
Where did the quote there, revelation of terrible, beautiful experiment, did you say that comes from Raising Initiations?
It does. I think it's around page 43 or something like that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Something right in there, 42, 43, somewhere like that. We've gone over it in our classes, but
oh yes,
it helps to see these things more than once. Okay, okay, go ahead, Carl. You seem to have your hand up again there.
Yeah, in regards to moving forward, I think my opinion is that one of the ways to move forward is stop believing our own thoughts and stop identifying with them, and that enables us to become the observer, and that way to discover whether those are true or that we're entertaining.
Yeah, the what do they call it? The attitude of the observer, DK, in his arcane school suggestions to Alice Bailey. This was a big deal, using the attitude of the observer. And, I think it's a very occult technique because it absolutely detaches you from all the things that hold you in prison. And eventually you discover that the observer is a very occult factor within yourself, that the observer is your own kind of personal or individual silent watcher. Your observer is really the monad, and ultimately, it just keeps rising and rising and rising as it gets rid of more and more identifications until you're left with yourself as the spirit. So I think it's a very occult technique and very, very useful, and and it leads to this factor we call impersonality. This is not the same as transpersonality. Impersonality is the attitude of the spiritual triad or the monad towards everything that is occurring below. It leads us into those worlds. So it's easy to talk about, but can we do it? So that's what we have to work at. Right. Thank you, Carl.
Yes.
Okay, any other, do we see any other?
We have a question.
Yes, okay.
Suzanne asks, the works of Roberto Yoli are a good source to ponder concerning, quote, the observer.
Exactly. Yeah. I was gonna say something about it, Sergio. He said that when you look at your own personality or any dynamics occurring within your field of consciousness, you should treat it with total objectivity, just like a scientist would, not caring what you see. In other words, what you see is what you see, the truth of it. You leave your emotional body out of it. I don't care whether it looks this way or that way. It can look good, it can be bad, terrible. You just describe it with objectivity. And you may know that Roberto Saggioli in the Tibetans group had the letters given to him representing the qualities he was to deal with, F, C, and D. So it was freedom from ties, and then a C was chela-ship, and the last thing was detachment. So, both he and Alice Bailey, both of them had detachment as one of the major qualities that they had to cultivate. So, he knew what he was talking about. He was working on that very thing himself when he talked about having the scientific fifth ray attitude towards everything that is occurring within your lower system, maybe even higher system. But can we achieve that? That's the question. Okay. Okay, anything else? A telephone? God calling? Let's see. Let's see. It looks like Suzanne is saying something. Someone who's saying something? Yes, Suzanne. Oh, yes. Oh, that was you. Okay. That was you, Suzanne. Okay. That was you. Okay. Anything else? Obviously, we are going at this slowly, carefully, and so forth. So we're not going to understand fully immediately. I don't, and it's taken a lot of years, and we'll work at it together. So anyway, Helena, I see your hand. You go ahead, please.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Can.
Okay, good.
Good.
Excellent, because I'm outside here. Yeah, so here we are in Libra, which represents a cardinal cross. And so I have a dual question, one quite simple, and maybe the other just a kind of entering into idea question. As we are moving into the different constellations, they are going to be bringing up, the energies. These energies are constantly pouring in upon us. And so I was wondering, if we could, in our meditation, tailor these meditations also to include what could be coming up through the ray energies and or through the rulers of the constellations. So here we are in Libra with the third ray prominent, and the glamours that may be coming through the third ray and or any of the rulers through the decanates. Here we are in Venus as the first decanate. So that's just a suggestion idea. I'd love to have your thoughts on that. And before I also, and I may have missed this, probably the sessions here, where you talked about when we do the actual meditation and we do the little crossing, on the eyes and the on the centers. Yeah. And you're mentioning that it is not an Aquarian cross, but a Piscean cross. And if you wouldn't mind, I know I guess you probably talked about this early on.
Long arm cross, yeah, and he deliberately uses the long arm cross of idealism in this particular thing. I guess it relates most somehow to the astral plane. The Aquarian cross is another matter, of course, and naturally we have to understand that we are moving towards the Aquarian cross, but in this particular situation, he seems to prefer to use that. I maybe can find the explanation somewhere there. Well,
Okay, that's very good. Thank you.
Well, here's my thought, Helena. I can see the value in amplifying. Audio connection has been lost. Now it's restored, okay? I don't want to get lost and restored here. The loss should be found. Anyway, I really try to keep it simple, just the way DK did. I can see the value of maybe in maybe some specialized groups and so forth that want to go more deeply into the astrology, correlated with the time and all the rest of it, doing as you suggest. And of course, there's more than one ray that comes through constellation too. Libra has a tremendous second ray and a very strong first ray with it as well. It gets a little bit complicated. So although it's very, very interesting, and I would suggest it for some people who have some ability in esoteric astrology, my tendency is to just try to keep it as simple as possible with what DK has given. I see the value, but the simplicity in the simplicity can lie the power too, and then we won't get confused. And for esoteric astrology groups and so forth, why not? Sure.
Yeah.
Anything.
I hear what you're saying. Learn the technique first, and then we can apply it specifically.
Absolutely. I'd just be really happy if I could see those glamours blown away by the Buddhic wind and dissipated in the great sun. I'd be happy to just nail a couple of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I hear you.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay, and Alex. Okay. Go ahead, Alex.
Hi. Following Rose's question, I heard you say recently that some people don't have a solar angel. Can you elaborate on that?
Back in the old days, there were some of the animal men who had not progressed very far. So what the solar angel could do is fan the mental unit until it became sufficiently vibrant to reach the point of individualization. But then the solar angel, this is how I understand it, did not invest itself in those particular human beings, leaving them for a time to work out their own development with their own faculties, not a forcing process such as the majority of human beings have at this time, but working out that ignited mental unit and their own causal body, which was, created, without the internal presence of the solar angel. Later, I believe the solar angel will invest itself in those particular beings, probably in the fifth round. Now, what Blavatsky seems to suggest is these include, some of the Aboriginal groups and the Bushmen and some of the Bushmen maybe, and that doesn't mean that advanced souls cannot incarnate in these groups. Okay, let's be clear about that. Also, the Vedas of Sri Lanka or Ceylon, and also the Ainus related to Japan. Those are four of the groups that she seems to mention that are not being cultivated under the artificial hothouse forcing process. Now I want to say another thing. Many of us are from the moon chain. As a matter of fact, probably the majority of disciples who are into these mental esoteric things have experienced having individualized on the moon chain with no solar angel. In other words, there was the yearning, the aspiration of animal man towards his own higher spirit, and the downflow of the spirit helping to create the causal body. In what manner? Well, I don't know. That, somehow the causal body was created on the higher mental plane through the response of the higher aspect of the man himself. But now, here's what happens, at least in my view. The life on the moon chain is forced to migrate. Only the third aspect of divinity is left there. There is no more human units and deva units of the higher kind. They're all transferred to the fourth chain. And the human beings that already have a lotus of a kind, they incarnate in the third sub-race of the fourth root race, which is quite a bit later than human beings became individualized in Lemuria. And what happens? Well, they have solar angels. How do they have solar angels? The idea is that a solar angel attaches itself to such a being who is already individualized. In this case, the solar angel is not responsible for the individualization of that being, but is responsible for its forced hothouse growth, you might say. And I think that's all of us, so many of us. I mean, the great majority of people who are studying DK, who himself is probably from the moon chain, are moon chain types with solar angels because they have allied themselves with the already created egoic lotuses. As for some of the earlier groups, they are going to have to wait until the next round before they get that type of investiture. That's my view at the present time.
Okay, thank you.
You bet, Alex. Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, everybody. So anything else before we plunge into our usual meditation? It's tough going in the world at the present time. There's so much division and there's so much lack of understanding, based upon the separatism of the present fifth ray personality of humanity, and the huge number of sixth ray souls that are preparing to go out of incarnation and are having their last hurrah, which involves, maybe great idealism, but a lot of destruction and separativeness as well. So we have quite a situation. Let's see now. Helena, is that you again, or did you raise your hand again, or was that just something I didn't put down? Okay.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. It was just one of those things. All right. Anybody else? Brett, do you see anybody else?
Looks good.
Okay, good. All right, friends. Well, that's, next week. Now, Tuija and I will do our best with all of these things. Sometimes we're traveling. We have a portable broadcasting system here, and maybe you'll hear the sound of reindeer in the distance. I don't know. But anyway, it seems to be working pretty well, both for music and for voice. But sometimes we're just traveling or have certain family issues that have come up and it might not be possible, in which case we will, through Brett and through CC and through Student Union and so forth, attempt to notify you ahead of time so you know. Right now we're in the PM series of broadcasts, and then next week again the AM 5 a.m. GMT. So if it's not convenient for you sometimes, maybe the next week it will be more convenient for you. If you have to wake up at 3 a.m. to get one of these things, then, well, it's going to show an unusual degree of dedication. Maybe some 6 ray, who knows. Okay, so, yes.
Michael?
B.O., is that you?
And one thought, no, it's Libby.
Libby.
So, but one thought is we have this wonderful collection of previous webinars with the meditation, so people can always join us, when it's convenient for them.
Yes, it's good in that respect, and they'll be on Makara, and Brett gets them up as soon as we can. And like I said, we went through all of the ray glamours, so if you want to pick up some of those and you miss some of those, and there's readings every time, so academically it's also worth the process. So Yeah, a good suggestion, and just go to Makara and pick up what you haven't participated in if you wish to do so. Okay, friends. Okay, you've stuck it out so far. Now let's have our meditation. And this is, for the dissipation of world glamour, and we're focusing, really on two things at the same time. One is certainly the glamour, he calls it the great glamour of hatred. And then there's this whole great heresy of separateness. It's as much an illusion as it is a glamour, but they really go together, because without that illusion of separativeness or separateness, we're not going to have the great glamour of hatred. So these two things go together. And in a time when humanity is making big decisions, we want to try to eliminate these particular dynamics from the decisions being made. There's so much, the law of repulse is a real thing. It's an aspect of the law of love. It's the fourth law of the soul. But the law of repulse is quite different from just repulsing other people because you find them different from you and separate from you and somehow not living the way you would live. And, it's not the same as trying to understand. There comes a time, I think, when decisions have to be made. They were made in the Second World War. Hierarchy did actually take sides. It tried to the more expansive, inclusive approach before the war broke out, but once it did and humanity's survival was so threatened, it did take sides, but we're not necessarily there yet. And so we have to get rid of this, while being very realistic about what different groups offer to the progress of humanity or take away from it. We have to approach everything with loving understanding as much as may be possible. And that would help us overcome the great glamour of hatred and the great heresy of separateness. Okay, friends, here we go. So our version of naming the group members is pretty well to sit within the group field for a few moments of silence, realizing that we are all souls together in this work, in a unified consciousness, and we'll let the silence for a few moments do its work in unifying us and empowering us. Because the silence is the synthesis, and the spirit is the synthesis, and the monad is the synthesis. So silence is very useful. And when you're doing this yourself, you can prolong the minutes of silence. Now, this work is not without its dangers, as the glamour group supervised by the Tibetan found out. So a protective formula is needed, and where you are and in your own place, on self-mute, of course, we say this together and visualizing what it means. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light, I work, and from that point, I never move. And as we think about this, we can make that sign of the cross. You can go over it in your mind. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. He calls it the cross of divinity, and watch that word divinity. It's different from spirituality. It often means the spirit is involved. So here we are within the light, and we go through these stages where we draw up the light of matter from within our personality, or even from within the etheric, physical, and astral planes, and focus upon the mental plane. That's the light of mind. Two lights together. And draw down then, recognizing soul light, as if perhaps above your head, however you want to visualize it, the brilliant light of the soul drawn down onto the higher part of the lower mental plane, and three lights meet. The light of matter, the intelligent light of mind, and the unitive light of the soul. So this brilliant light is visualized, and then together we say, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. And let us remember that in the 12 zodiacal types of light, the light of day relates to Scorpio and to the Buddhic plane, the higher light of intuition, which this triple light we are making can reveal. And now we work with the next statements, which we visualize as the beginning of the formula. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And the great searchlight we have generated is turned upon the astral plane as we review what we have just said. We turn the darkness into day, and this, of course, the wind and the sun symbolically do their task, and the sun shines. And we try to really understand what we're doing. It's not just a rote automatic formula. With our mind, we understand, with the soul-illumined mind. It is a group beam to which each of us contributes. And now to empower this beam, we invoke the spiritual will, which comes from the monad, the atmic plane, the jewel in the lotus, the will synthesis petal, the sacrifice petals, and so forth. Spiritual will to empower the beam we have generated. And we say together, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. So there is that fusion of will with the light of the soul, the light of mind, the light of matter, the triple fused light now fused with spiritual will, which is the will which carries out the divine plan. Now, we get into the active work of dissipation. We're dealing with the glamour of hatred and the glamour illusion of separativeness fused together. And we see the light working with the weakening and the dissipation of those clouds of hatred and separativeness as we say the three words of power. This is the group beam we're using. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of hatred and separativeness. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind the glamour. So keeping these words of power in mind, visualizing the group beam penetrating the clouds of glamour and producing its weakening and dissipation, we work for 5 minutes in silence with intensity of purpose. And if you work this way on your own, use the formula and always invoke the presence of the group. We work with intensity of purpose, the creative imagination, and we see the dissipation of the clouds of glamour. And the sun shines. And this is the symbol of the heart of the sun, taking its place, providing its influence upon the astral plane as must occur by the time of the second initiation. So we refocus ourselves now upon the mental plane. We turn our attention away from the astral plane and the searchlight of the soul, including the light of mind and the light of matter, empowered by the strength of will. That searchlight is turned off. And we are back together upon the plane of mind, the soul-infused plane of mind. And now let us sound together 3 ohms for effectiveness upon each of the 3 levels of personality. I want to thank all of you for attending this session. Tomorrow, the Destiny of the Nations, and Sunday, the Attraction of Money for Hierarchical Purposes. I also want to remind you of the Moria Federation. That we do study these things intensively in the Moria Federation and many, many other things as we attempt to fulfill, to the extent we can, Master DK's curriculum for the preparatory schools. No one can fulfill it entirely, but we try to be embracing and comprehensive. So do go to, if you're not a member of the Moria Federation, go to moriafederation@gmail.com and read about what we do, and perhaps you will fill out an application and join our intensive, what can I call it, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 8 year process. It never really ends, you know. You're the eternal student entering into the field of occultism. So look forward to having you apply to the Federation. I know it will do you good, as it does all of us as we enter ever more deeply into the ageless wisdom. Thank you for your participation, and we'll see you tomorrow, 5 p.m. GMT, whatever time it may be for you. All the best to everybody, and Olivia, Tuija, and I, and our staff, Brett, BL, and Joe Waltz, all wish you the very best. See you then. Now there's Tuija. Okay. See you then. Bye-bye.